Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for December 31st, 2024. Coming up, the Cleveland Cavaliers keep on rolling and the Warriors are struggling. We get Sam Amick on the show to talk about Mike Brown and the Sacramento Kangs. And then S has some wild stats about LeBron to celebrate his birthday. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, S. We had ourselves a Monday night in the NBA last night. We had blowouts. Yeah. We had some marquee matchups that just didn't pan out. You know, typical Monday.
Case of the Mondays, all good.
Yeah, we're back. This is our last show of the year, S. Yes. Congratulations on both of us not getting fired before the calendar switches to January. Hey, so I'll take that as a win. No show tomorrow, folks. Just get that over with. Let you guys know. No show tomorrow. We're going to have the night off. Hopefully spending dinner with our families and not running into a bunch of people. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit of hoops because the Cleveland Cavaliers are on a historic start to the season. They're now 28-4 after just destroying the Warriors last night, S. And it's become kind of old hat watching them. I feel like, and shout out to Zena, because she has trusted the Cavs longer than I have. I feel like every single game, I just trust them a little bit more. This one, they hold the Warriors to 11 points in the second quarter, and then they exploded offensively in the third. And look, they've just got every single gear you need to be a championship contender. I think it's time to we're penciling them in. This is a conference finalist. I think the road to the finals in the East, I think it's Boston and it's Cleveland, and no one else is close.
And especially because Boston has looked a little bit more human as of late, over the last month. And so that indestructible scheme feels a little bit more destructible. And now you have this very, very worthy opponent in the Cavaliers that are firing on all cylinders. Like the way that they exploded offensively against the Warriors and then what they did to the Nuggets the other night, it was surgical. Darius Garland was out there just carving everybody up. And then, once Garland kind of switches off, it's Donovan Mitchell taking over the show and absolutely feasting. The 3-point shooting from both of those guys is incredible. One of the interesting things about the Cavs in this start is that it puts them in like a historic category, right? You go and you look up like winning percentage over the first 32, 35 games, basically like 40% of the season. It puts them in rarefied air. Like they are, if they continue winning at this pace, they are on pace to win 70 games, which is, that's laughable. It's absurd. So, I mean, it's hard to stop believing or maybe not believing in this Cavaliers team. It's just hard to do.
To me, look, we're always going to treat them like they need to prove it because we do this until you win a title.
Yeah.
So, but they're a prove it to me in May, June. But we're going to see them in May or June. This team is it's very good.
They will be there.
Solid.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Evan Mobley's breakout has just been pretty fantastic to watch. Although Draymond did block his shot early, or excuse me, that was Jared Allen. Draymond got a nice block shot on Jared Allen early in the game, and I thought we were about to get sicko Draymond, but instead, man, look like sick Draymond. The Warriors what is going on with them? They make this Dennis Schroeder trade, and it has not been great so far, which, okay, you're integrating new pieces. Yeah. But they just are unable to put the ball in the basket at all.
They are one of the weirdest offensive teams in the league, and they have Steph Curry. It's just a very bizarre team around him because there's not a ton of ball handling, not a ton of creation around him. Buddy Hield has fallen off a cliff here when it comes to the offense and the shooting that he provided, especially in transition for them at the start of the year. But the other side is it's had a dual effect on their defense. Their defense has not been the same over this stretch either. And so they've been trying to play. Steve Kerr has been trying to play with different lineups to see what works and what doesn't. They've given Jonathan Kuminga more of a leash. And we've seen, I think tangible steps from Kuminga on the offensive end. But it's also bled into them not having as effective of a defensive team. And so you couple that with the fact that they're struggling on O. Man, it's a tough stretch for the Warriors. They were 12-4 a month ago, right?
Yeah, they haven't won 2 games in a row since November 20th and November 22nd. That was the last time. So it's been 16 games since they put together back-to-back wins. And again, this is a team that we keep saying Cam Johnson is on everyone's list. They need Cam Johnson and maybe another guy.
Maybe more.
I just don't know. It's weird because they had so much depth, but the DeAnthony Melton injury has triggered this sort of cascade of events. And it doesn't help him that Pods hasn't really panned out this year to be the player that they expected him to be. But my prediction for this conference finals run for them is not looking great right now.
It's looking tough. It looked great a month into the season.
You know what? On paper, I think everyone agrees with me that this is a top 5 defense, but they're killing me right now.
Well, wait, let me ask you this. What do you think the solution is moving forward for this Warriors team? Because they got to clean things up.
Can they trade for LeBron? That would solve a lot of problems for him. They really
there's
just
like
they
a
need
1%
a drink stirrer.
chance. Yeah,
they need a drink stirrer. I mean, it's not LeBron, but like if they could get Paul George or a Paul George type, it would be fantastic for them. I just, he's not out there. Maybe Jimmy Butler. I don't know. We'll see what Sam Amick has to say after the break. Let's catch up a little bit on Joel Embiid. The Sixers got a nice, we're going to say an easy one against the Blazers and blew them out. But story of the game, this was probably Joel Embiid's best game of the season. I think that we can say that he's starting to round into shape a little bit. Like he looks healthier moving around, doesn't look as stiff. It was painful to watch him the first few games back, but he was great last night.
Yeah, 37 points, had 9 rebounds, plus 26 again. It's against a Blazers team, but I love the fact that he's getting to the line like he was before. Took 13 free throw attempts tonight. That's a patent area of Joel Embiid's game, and I think ultimately when it comes to how mobile he is, how physical he's able to be with other defenders. Also, one of the biggest tells for him on the defensive end is how physical and aggressive he can be there. His lateral movement has been better over the last couple of games. I think that has helped tie together a lot of defensive lineups for the Sixers. So over that last 10 games, which the Sixers have been 7-3, they've had the 14th best offense, 14th best defense, which is really good compared to where they were before. And he's worked well with Tyrese Maxey. I think Maxey and Embiid have a really, really great combination. But now it's about figuring out what Paul George can do, right? How does he fit into this?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I have his stats sitting right in front of me because
there you go.
He's having a weird start to the season. I mean, he had the injury to start out. Obviously, the entire Sixers roster, the roster has been in flux, and the Embiid situation has not been easy. Tyrese Maxey was out. You had Jared McCain out there for a little while, and I think that he is the guy here who is getting a little lost in the shuffle. But he's struggling to integrate right now. He's averaging 13.9 field goal attempts coming into tonight's game. I think he only shot 9 last night. So another, again, this is down for Paul George in his career. Now, you would expect that. You're playing with Joel Embiid. You're definitely number 2 in the pecking order. But the truth is here, he might be third to Maxey because of maximizing Joel Embiid. And so I'm not sure. I mean, where does Paul George fit? And I know the fit in the playoffs because he can lead second units. He's another guy you can put the ball in his hands. But right now it's a little bit of an odd fit. And you wonder, did they maybe make a mistake and not getting a couple of guys or 3 guys instead of just Paul George?
Yeah, it also is different for Paul George because, usually he is a high usage guy. He's a guy that's getting tons of touches, tons of on-ball reps. And we haven't seen him in this off-ball dominant role as much since maybe his Indiana days, so it's a big role adjustment for him to go back to where he was before. I do think it'll take some time, but I think eventually he'll start to get acclimated to what he needs to do offensively for the Sixers. It's just be an incredible off-ball player. And we've seen that Paul George can do that in times. But yeah, it's growing pains right now for him in Philly.
Yeah, again, he's the guy, he's the new guy, and he's still just the new guy.
You remember the Kevin Love with the Cavaliers thing where it's don't fit in, fit out, or whatever it was?
No, he needs to fit in. Paul George needs to fit in. It'll be great. Just fit in with Joel Embiid. He's an MVP. And we got to mention before we go to break, Doug Christie, new coach, interim coach of Sacramento Kings. That's right. Got his first win. The Mavericks didn't have Luka or Kyrie. Okay. And they kept it interesting, but Doug Christie gets his first win. Congratulations, coach. Guys, stick around after the break. We got Sam Amick to break down the behind-the-scenes stuff from the Mike Brown firing and to talk a little bit about if Pat Riley's serious about not trading Jimmy Butler. The Sacramento Kings had what can only be described as an interesting weekend. They fired their coach right before they were about to leave for a road trip. And our guys, Sam Amick and Anthony Slater, had the whole scoop over at The Athletic. So we got Sam on to talk to us about it today. Sam, I hope you're doing well. I know you're staying busy This is normally the doldrums, but we got a little bit of action happening. Can you break down the timeline on the firing of Mike Brown and just kind of give the general sense of why it happened?
Of course. Thank you for having me, guys. Happy holidays. Juggling the day job with all this stuff. We put our Christmas tree out yesterday. It's that time of year. The Kings put their head coach out the other day, if you happen to hear. The timeline, Dave, that loss to the Pistons, obviously, for the most part, was the final straw. They're up big late. And by the way, everybody keeps glossing over the fact that Domantas Sabonis did not play, kind of a big factor. But he's not playing because of an illness. Terrible ending to that game, a 4-point play in the corner with De'Aaron Fox having an absolute boneheaded defensive decision. And then this was a theme that continued. Mike Brown's post-game press conference, where he was pretty candid and cutting and with his commentary on that play, was the type of thing that, kept getting everybody's attention. Mike being so publicly critical of the players. But they, of course, didn't make the decision until the next day after the Kings practiced, after, there were social media pictures of Mike and Darren talking at practice. And, our understanding is that it's essentially the procedural delays are the reason that they didn't tell Mike that he was out earlier. You had people in different places. You had meetings that had to take place. You had legalities, all of the above. It's not the first time a coach has been fired over the phone, but certainly it sparked a lot of support for Mike around the league, with Michael Malone putting the Kings on blast and Steve Kerr and people like that.
Oh, there's some real solidarity anytime a coach gets fired, especially one like this. I mean, he was just coach of the year, Sam. It's like a curse.
It is. And I think this, to me, the central question, the coach of the year thing has got John Hollinger wrote about it the other day. It's undisputable history of that being a curse. Yeah. But for the Kings, it kind of was, a tipping point where, was Mike Brown the most central, important, secure figure in the room who was going to lead this franchise going forward? Obviously, the answer was no. It was not that long ago that I would have said the answer was yes, that above the front office, that Mike was kind of taking over the franchise. And within these struggles, the 6-game losing streak, not meeting expectations, you started to learn little by little that Mike's voice was not winning out. And the synergy wasn't there between, him in the front office and ownership. So, interesting times in SAC again, and we'll see if it makes a difference here.
It's a star-driven league, and I think I've been mentioning this a lot when it comes to the situation. But you've heard De'Aaron Fox speak about it now a few times and how he felt about the Mike Brown situation. I think even in the article you guys mentioned that it wasn't directly something that had to do with the players, but although at some point there was a loss of the locker room, if you will, quote unquote. Sure. How much do you think that factors into the Kings calculus when it comes to making this decision? Because now there's the Fox rumors of it all too, right?
Yeah, the Fox thing, and the quick backdrop there to remind the listeners is like it's kind of getting glossed over. As we reported, it was a week before that, De'Aaron's agent Rich Paul shows up to Golden One Center. He's out there kind of center stage, so to speak. He's sitting with De'Aaron's wife, Rasay, for the entire game, talking to her the entire game. Before the game, as we reported, he had a meeting with the front office where it was made very clear that you're in the danger zone here. Basically they are thinking about De'Aaron's future. They are clearly contemplating the prospect of asking for a trade. They have not done that to this point, but he's not happy with the vision here or the path that they are on. The part that is tough to speak to is how much of the Mike Brown decision was truly player driven, because everybody I talked to, that was downplayed. That the influence and the pressure applied by the players, for the most part, was secondary, if that makes sense. Like, you can't. There's a lot of this stuff we all saw. The press conferences matter. It's tough to be that hard on players when you are losing. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, this gets glossed over too. Mike's an old school coach. It's practicing every day. It's having shoot arounds every game day. Right. That stuff flies when you are kind of the belle of the ball and you're the beam team and everybody loves you. But when you're losing games, that stuff, kind of wears thin. Sabonis and Brown were known to have a tricky relationship where Domantas would push back a lot on Mike. And so some angst on that front. But you have to also realize that, Vivek Ranadive, the longtime owner of the Kings, who has been through so many coaches at this point, my feeling is that at least part of this calculus was him being concerned about De'Aaron's future. He does not want to lose De'Aaron Fox.
Right.
So to me, in fairness to De'Aaron, who has pushed back on social media publicly about the idea that he played a part here, you got to, De'Aaron is not responsible for the organization fearing what he might do, if that makes sense. If they made choices based partly on that, that's not his fault. He's simply trying to figure out his situation. So a lot of layers to it. I think where I land, guys, we don't really get paid to pick sides here. We're trying to convey what happened.
Yeah.
But Mike Brown's a hell of a coach. And, if you look at the room and point the finger and say, yep, he's the problem right there, I would not agree with that. And I don't, I like Doug Christie. I'm curious to see how he does as a coach. The roster is the roster. The roster has holes.
Yeah.
This is not a good team. It has holes.
It's as simple as that sometimes.
In your piece, their big prize free agent acquisition was DeMar DeRozan, and very good player. Yeah. But was that what this team needed? I just don't think so. You're not paid to pick sides, but I don't mind. And I think that the coach was not the problem in that situation outside of his reaction in the post-game stuff, which, like you just said, you can only do that for so long before things are going to go left. I mean, we're hearing today that maybe there was this idea that DeMar DeRozan come off the bench, and maybe that, it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't know. Maybe there's no way to find that answer out. But for the Kings, where do they go next? I mean, they want to keep Fox. I'm assuming, this is their core. How do they improve?
They're in a bind. I mean, they're very active on the trade market right now. And in fact, even kind of in the days leading up to the Mike Brown firing, I don't know all the specifics, but I was told that they were pretty deep in some different trade stuff where they were looking for something to change that didn't have to be the coach, didn't have to be DeMar going to the bench. This is what you do when you're struggling is you tinker. And I think and this is where the front office, to their credit, they're willing to take accountability here. If the front office had been able to get something over the finish line, then Mike might still be the coach. They don't mind admitting that. Now, I've heard them tied to Cam Johnson for quite a while now, but that is a very popular player at the moment. It's going to take a lot.
He's the belle of the ball right now. Right?
He really is. Yeah. They were tied to Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, obviously, he goes to the Lakers. There's some other options in there. They're perpetually tied to Kyle Kuzma. They've kicked around the Zach LaVine thing in the past. Brandon Ingram.
At some point, they need somebody who can play some defense, though. I mean, that's the thing that's limiting.
Yeah, I mean, a backup big is probably the number one priority. They've been, to me, it's a man, why am I blanking? I mean, Robert Williams type would be amazing for them.
Right.
That's the thing where you fix the Sabonis defensive problem. Because that's such a major issue.
Having that back line help defensively. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And honestly, one that is, and it was in our piece last week, Jonas Valanciunas is one that makes a lot of sense. Not only for how he would help them, but he's very close with Sabonis. Pretty tight relationship there. And by the way, part of that Pelicans team that went 6-0 against the Kings last year. So you know how decision makers in the NBA a lot of times are guilty of they want to go get the guy who kicked their ass.
Yeah. Either the guy that kicked their ass or the guy that they kicked ass with. I mean, Doc Rivers is kind of like the king of that, I think. Yeah. So
It's like Kobe going to get Matt Barnes because
exactly.
He showed a little gusto type stuff.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes that works. Sam, I wanted to ask you, outside of the Kings, we're now officially approaching, trade deadline season, if you will. We're like 5 weeks away from the trade deadline. You talk about the Lakers trade and what they just did. Jimmy Butler is obviously a big name that comes up. You just mentioned Cam Johnson. Is there anything, I guess, bubbling up in the trade world or rumor world that you can maybe give us information on,
Well, I mean, the Jimmy thing, I think, is going to have to play out until around the deadline.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously Miami puts its statement out and is pretty clearly Pat Riley language. So that might as well have been the Pat Riley Twitter account announcing that they weren't trading Jimmy. Do I think it's partly a leverage play or a negotiating ploy? Yes. They don't like the level of noise right now.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure, and they clearly didn't love whatever seemed to be available to them trade wise in the conversations that they had. They were clearly not in love with. So now you got to play hardball. Now you got to push it. You have time to play those games. The Warriors, to me, are front and center on that issue because Phoenix has major obstacles with the Heat's, what appears to be their lack of desire to bring back Bradley Beal. That is a deal breaker. The Warriors, of course, have this calculus of, Steph and Draymond getting older. Could Jimmy come save the day and get them back into contention?
Right.
But then what are you paying Jimmy this summer if he opts
Jimmy's
out?
as old as they are.
Yeah.
I mean,
not a young guy, but he does help today.
Yeah.
No, he helps today, but then you got to recommit for tomorrow. That's the issue. And at the same time, you're going to be watching Jonathan Kuminga potentially flourishing in a Heat jersey and wondering what might have been. The problem is right now you're seeing Kuminga continue to improve, but it's not part of a winning calculus as of yet. Golden State is dropping games and they barely beat Phoenix the other night, but they're on a bad stretch. So to me, the Warriors are front and center with Jimmy. And I hate to make this like the all things Sacramento conversation today, guys, but like the Fox thing is still right there. Because, teams that are interested, they are doing their homework. They are asking questions. They are figuring out what, they would be willing to offer. There is a pretty significant appetite for De'Aaron Fox, if and when he decides that he wants out.
I mean, if he wants out, he's the best player available.
Yeah,
no question.
Hands down. I mean, if you were a team like Brooklyn and you were thinking, hey, you know what? If we wanted to start this rebuild tomorrow, let's throw a bunch of stuff and get De'Aaron. I mean, I don't know that they're definitely not going to do that, but
San Antonio,
he is just very good. San Antonio,
yeah.
He is the start of someone else's run of success. And it would just be a shame if the Kings didn't get to sniff any of that with De'Aaron Fox. Follow Sam on The Athletic. I think you can do it on the app and you get the alerts, pretty convenient. So you'll miss all the news on the Sacramento Kings.
Right here.
Yeah. Sam, thank you for joining us. Guys, stick around after the break. We're going to celebrate LeBron's 40th with some stats. So LeBron James turned 40 yesterday, and that's an insane number for a guy who's still doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Who's still doing what he's doing on the basketball court. Over at The Bounce, if you guys don't subscribe, go ahead and do it. It's a great newsletter. It hits hits your email inbox every morning. Zach Harper actually broke down just the stats that he's put up since he turned 37. And they're ridiculous. This is like, he's an all-star. He's an all-NBA player, and it's only the numbers since he turned 37. So go and check out The Bounce. But you put together some stats on LeBron because you like to see my reaction to some of the ridiculous numbers that you're able to find. So you're basically our stat guy.
Sure.
Give me some LeBron at 40 stats.
I'll take the stat moniker. Why not? Look, most people know he is the points leader, right? 41,131 in total, right? Counting, actually. He'll probably get to 42,000 pretty easily, which is crazy. He has more points combined than Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh together.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not just it. You could probably go ahead and actually pick more of his teammates. It's likely for Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving and all those guys,
but
too.
But two Hall of Famers that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll give you another one. This is the craziest one, and I can't take credit for this. This is Todd Whitehead from Synergy who posted this one. I think you'll really enjoy this, okay?
At Crumpled Jumper.
Yes.
On X or Twitter or whatever.
Yeah. About 2.8 billion people have been born since the last time LeBron missed an All-NBA team.
Oh my God.
That's more than a third of the global population and 2.5% of everybody who has ever lived can't remember a time when LeBron James wasn't a top 15 player in the NBA. That's a great stat. I think that's the one. That's the one. Yeah. It's like there is a large majority of people who ever lived on Earth that now enjoy LeBron James and have watched LeBron James.
That is absurd. And we're about to cross the 8.1 billion person mark on the planet. And so those numbers are just going to keep going up for a little while. And how long do you think LeBron has left? He said yesterday in an interview, he's got 5 to 7 years of elite play left.
That's incredible.
Look, there's been a drop off, and there's been a drop off just in the last year that we can all point to.
Totally. Yeah.
And we already did our old man LeBron bit.
Yeah.
But since then, he has looked fantastic. I don't know. I think if he can continue to avoid injury with as smart as he is and with the right pieces around him, I think another 2 or 3 years at this or something close to this is super realistic.
Yeah, I think probably, the truthful answer is whenever the NBA signs off on expansion. That's probably the answer. Yeah. He'll get notified and, Vegas will be his essentially. But I think probably another 2 years. It would be crazy if he ends up playing with his other son, Bryce James. It's just like, why not? Let's just do both.
Let's just pump the brakes. We'll see if this kid even makes the NBA. I think that's a great place to stop. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. That's going to do it for the year. Thank you guys again so much. We appreciate all the reviews and the
Happy
emails
New Year,
and everything.
everybody.
Happy New Year to you guys. Happy New Year, S. Happy New Year to Zena and Andrew and Alex and our whole gang that works on the show. Happy to work with these guys every single day and happy that you guys are listening. So for Es Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.